Hi everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Playbook Series, where we get to share real stories, real strategies, stand-up moments, behind some of the boldest marketing leaders across many industries. We believe that there is a playbook for everything. There's a playbook for everything, for every campaign, for every strategy, for every win. There's a playbook. My name is Patrick Nwafor, and our guest today is really an exciting person. She's someone who has built brands, she's shaped narratives, she's broken ceilings across Africa's tech, fintech, and the creative sectors. She's the Chief Vision Officer at Xcentrique Media. She's also the ex-head of brand and marketing at CWG PLC, and then the convener of Tech Excellence Conference, among so many hats. She also leads an initiative called the Marketing Girls Corner. So I want us to welcome today the incredible Seun Koshoedo. Thank you so much, Seun. You're welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning or this afternoon, wherever anyone is joining
Thank
from.
you
It's
for
a pleasure
having
to have you on the session today of the Playbook Series. So I'd like us to start from the top, from
Okay.
the very beginning.
Okay.
You've been in the game for about 8 years now, or for over 8 years, in driven marketing strategy across tech, across fintech, finance, across social impact, a couple of other industries that you must have stumbled upon. So what sparked your journey into brand strategy and marketing comms? What led to it?
Okay, so it's a long story. I hope you have time.
Got all the time in the world.
So, I like to say initially for me, it wasn't brand, it was not marketing, it was not brand strategy and everything I'm doing right now. When everybody was saying they wanted to be doctors, they wanted to be pilots, initially wanted to be a musician, and as I started to read more and understand more, wanted to be that media girl. So if I had followed that path, I would have been one of today's influencers or content creators. So I really wanted to be that TV girl and all of that. But the defining moment was when I was in my second year in school, mass communication, and how they do it in Babcock is you have to select either a major in broadcast or a major in public relations and advertising. In my head, you don't have to read so much to understand broadcasting. All you need to do is have talent. All you need to do is observe to feel the shoes and so much more. I read a lot and I understood that for PR and advertising, there's a lot of science and methodology that goes into it. So I decided to do that. So interestingly, all through university, I did, a lot of internships, first year, second year. So third year was what shaped my mind or shaped the brand and marketing narrative for me. I interned at a company called Birdview Communications then, and it was a different form of internship for me. You know how, a lot of people or a lot of narratives told about internships are very different. It's not as impactful as people expect. Instead of learning, people are turned to errand boys, errand girls, and all of that. I can confidently say that it was different for me. I was treated as an employee of the company that I was working in at that point. Interestingly, I was reporting directly to the CEO. The CEO was somebody that started his career at the age of 19. Right. And he never worked for anybody. He might not have known his name is Mr. Ayob Alabaido. If AY, that's what we used to call him, can do it, I can. So I worked closely with him, right? And I monitored him. The interesting part was I was being involved in everything. I was leading things. I was developing strategies. I was designing. A large percentage of what they used to do then was more of TV production, right? So we had something called the Legendary Show, which was for today's legend. I mean, we had people like Two-Face Idibia. We had, Patience Zokwa. We had Ozzy. We had a lot of them come for the show. So I was one of the designers of the idea, the show project and the show concepts in its entirety. We had the proposal show and so much more. Post-production of the show, the CEO observed that I like to use my phone a lot. So he gave me the Legendary Show to build on social then. Interestingly, at that period or at that phase, social media was used for social interactions. Brands were not so big on using social media for corporate communications, for brand positioning, for brand management as we see today. They were just beginning to jump on that bandwagon. We didn't have a lot of agencies that were managing brands or managing social media, digital platforms on behalf of brands. It was more of traditional media buying, was more of traditional media placements. traditional PR placement, and so much more. So a lot of things that we had to do to grow the legendary show then had to be very organic. And interestingly, I knew a lot of people, so it was more of follow the legendary show. We use Snapchat hashtags, so there was a lot of hashtags raining. Then you take a picture, you say hashtag the legendary show, and share, and was going viral, right? So the CEO will come and say, "Hey, Sean, if you're able to grow from 0 to 500, I would double your salary." I mean, as an intern, some people don't even get the opportunity of being paid. Imagine my salary being doubled. That was motivation enough. So from 500, he'll come, move to 3,000, get your salary doubled, then move to 10,000, and I'll double your salary. And, that was a task for me. And I'm so big on challenges. 10,000, and it was very simple. We ran campaigns. So we're just being very creative then, because like I said, people were not intentionally using social media for things like brand management, business promotion, and every exciting thing that we see right now. We didn't even have influencers. It was more of, social forms, using people, having a lot of friends and using them to promote whatever you wanted to promote at that phase. So yeah, I hit the 10,000 goal and something changed. It was exciting for me. I feel like that was a defining moment in my career and the things that I am doing today. What was first defining for me was building something from ground up, from 0 to 10,000, and it was a 4 months internship. Another defining moment was being rewarded for it. Another defining moment was saying, yes, you made it happen. Another defining moment was being creative enough in a world where there might have been some sort of restrictions, right? It's being creative enough to come up with something that led to us achieving the results that we achieved at that point. And it was then that I decided that I wanted to do, it was just digital marketing then. It was not necessarily branding. Branding too was not as appreciated as much as we do appreciate it now, especially in the digital world. So went to school. That's when I started being on a first class and all of that. My game was on, my switch was on, and I felt like I was just very unstoppable. Interestingly, in school, I was still working for the communications company, but I was struggling, and that had to end. So 400 level, I was done. I interned at Inspiration FM. When it was time for service, a lot of people heard about the work that I did with the legendary show, and they wanted to work for me. How much were they paying me then? It was like 20,000 naira. So let's say I was working with 5 people, managing and growing their social media, and each person was paying me 20,000 naira. But the interesting brand at that point was Delicious Foods. I don't know if you know Delicious Foods.
Who's
So
delicious?
she's
I've worked with her on something
yes.
before.
Okay, that's interesting. So she's one of the big food YouTubers now. So also supported her in building the brand then. So it's an entire story on its own. One thing I can remember that we used was, she has a great personal brand that, we observed that people would like to affiliate with, associate with. So the task was make you more visible. And, her food was just very creative. Then it was the plantain frittata that we used to launch her brand, right? So, she kept on talking about the plantain frittata, and, the blogs easily carried it, Cracks TV carried it, everybody started promoting it. People wanted to learn what plantain frittata was. It was unique, it was innovative, it was a different style, and there was this unique personal brand and personal face to it, and, it just helped her grow. So she was one of the interesting projects that I worked on. So during NYC, I really decided that I didn't want to work for anybody. I wanted to start my own digital company. At that point, it was like 2 years post my internship with the communications company. We had some agencies starting to actively manage brands. There's Up and Down Fellow that owns Penzerville. There's ID Africa. So I was very big on monitoring them, and they were one of the starters, especially when it had to do with social media management on behalf of brands at that phase. And more agencies started to come up, then. But for me, it was, I'm just going to do this. I can see myself doing this and I can make it happen. So I spoke to the same mentor. He advised that I needed to understand the corporate structure. I needed to understand the corporate world before I, jump into running my business, because I didn't understand system structures, processes at that phase. So post NYC, I wasn't even really done with NYC. I moved back to Lagos. NYC was in Oyo State anyway. Moved back to Lagos to work again with the place I interned in during my 300 level internship. So I was the brand executive initially. That's when I started to understand things about branding, the impact of colors, the impact of words, the impact of messaging, the impact of the kind of photos that you use and how you use them to tell a story. So I was actively managing different brands. So Birdview Communications then had its own brands. There was Green News, which was one of the largest BBM subscriber at that point. They had Birdview Travels. I was the one that was actively managing all of this at the same time. A few months after, I was promoted to being the digital executive and all of that. So I learned a lot where branding and digital is concerned. I think one thing that has helped me in my journey so far is having people and mentors to guide. I feel like because branding and marketing is so broad, right? Let's talk about marketing communication. You have branding, you have content marketing, you have digital marketing, you have event marketing, you have advertising. So you have all of this. So if you don't have somebody to guide you to find your superpower, you become lost, in the madness. And before you find yourself, it might take a while and it might be too late. But I've always had shoulders to lean on, to rest on, and to see from, which has helped guide my path so far. So, in the middle of that, I was being exposed to what I needed to do to establish myself as a marketing professional. The first course I ever took was, NIPR. So my mentor then was training me to be versatile in every area of marketing. Yes, I do have so being that marketing strategist, right? But somebody that understands what PR is, somebody that understands branding, somebody that understands digital marketing, somebody that understands how to plan events, somebody that understands social media management, somebody that understands advertising. So I was being exposed early on to all the courses, the knowledge, the information, the skills that I needed to be able to succeed in all areas of marketing. But of course, I can't be a jack of all trades. There has to be an area of specialization at some point. But it doesn't mean that if you're talking about certain things, as detailed as design, I'm not a designer, right? But I know and understand design. I can tell a good design from a bad design. That's because of how much I had to be able to work with designers, motion graphic artists, production managers, and all of that to be able to, understand that. So I was pushed into the world fast to learn as much as the world has to offer, at that age. Then from NIPR, I started my process with CIM, that's the Chartered Institute of Marketing UK. So from level 4, I have just completed it last year, 2 years ago, level 7. Yeah, so that's the highest level where CIM is concerned. So anyway, 1 year after working, I did an analysis, right? While I was working, I was also managing other brands. So I had to analyze. I was earning more from the brands I was consulting for in comparison to my full-time job. So at that phase, I decided to resign. Was it prematurely? I think not, really. Because when I look at it, everything that I have done, all the steps that I have taken, have contributed to what's shaping me at this point. So I resigned and decided to build Xcentrique Media, or start Xcentrique Media. I was 21, then anyway. But the interesting project that I was working on at that phase was relatable. It's owned by Jamie Foxx. So, there was somebody that bought the franchise in Nigeria. It's a luxury brand. When they penetrated the market, positioning was not necessarily for the luxury market. I mean, we had situations where they were doing storms at youth camps, NYC camps, and all of that. A pair of their sunglasses was about 25,000 naira then, and I think youth core members were being paid 17,000 or something or less. At that point, there was no way they were going to afford that. So it was exciting coming on board at that point and being able to reshape their positioning, being able to reshape how they communicate, to who they communicate, where they communicate it to as well. And interestingly, it worked. It was more on digital, the kind of influencers that they used, the kind of photographs that they used, supported in growing the brand. And in a month, it was about 350 sunglasses sold to the actual target market.
Wow.
At that phase. Post that, so then I was still a consultant anyway. Then in 2019, Xcentrique got its first big client in terms of name, positioning, who they were in the market. It was a financial service brand. 3Line, that's the name of the company anyway. So I had to structure everything. I had to register the business. I had to ensure that we had a corporate bank account and all of that. So post that time, it has been an interesting experience in terms of learning, in terms of feeling. I've had situations. I think the major roadblock or limitation or obstacle I had was people wanting to pay me based on how I looked, based on my age, not because of the experience that I was bringing to the table. So that was a bit difficult to navigate at that time. A lot of interesting things have happened from that period to now, really. But it was very interesting. It was weird. It brought on a lot of tears. It was like, you're not even listening to the knowledge. You're not even treating me based on the knowledge and based on the value that I am bringing. You think that she's too young to earn what she deserves. It was a bit of a culture shock. I'm Nigerian, right? But it was shocking to me and it was bizarre. So anyway, 2 years after I started Xcentrique, I realized that there was a void or there was a gap that I needed to fill. The technical side of things, I understood it. I had worked for free. I had worked on so many brands, failed, succeeded, championed. But there was still a void. I didn't understand business management, right? I didn't understand how to charge for what I was worth. I didn't understand entrepreneurship. I just understood marketing. And to run a business, you need more than that. You need operations and so much more. So I was referred to apply to be the head of brands and marketing for CWG PLC. At that time, I was 24. No, that's a lot of guts, right? Because then CWG was a 28-year-old company. So imagine a 24-year-old saying that she wants to be a head of marketing for a 28-year-old company. I knew that so one thing that I have done, I'm very specific about the kind of brands that I work with. Like I said, that my internship at 300 level was a defining moment for me. So I'm very big on foundations. Right? I'm very big on building from ground up. I'm very, very big on building from the scratch. I'm very big on success stories. I'm very big on transformations. And when I see that the brand that I choose or I have the privilege to work with at different points is one that I could add immense value to games. So, did a research on CWG and I saw that could really be valuable to this company. Went into the interview, sold myself, and saw the things that I could do in simple and straightforward terms. It took a while for them to make a decision, really. I'm young. I was young, or they thought I was young, and it's a 28-year-old company with 28-year-old policies, with a very structured, organized environment. And, there's this person, the world has a sort of standard on what age you should be, the number of experience that you should have before you're able to fit into certain roles. But, there's this young girl coming to say that she wants to be here. So it took a while for them to make a decision based on the limitations that they saw that I didn't see. But interestingly, I was selected. There's still a story about how I was selected, the limitations that might have been put in place to make me feel like I'm not supposed to be where I thought or where I knew that I could be. But they were surmounted, in the end. Post 3 years, I'm trying not to tell it all because I know that you still have questions. But post 3 years, after CWG, I had to make a decision, right? It was like a 3-year master course. I had the opportunity to report to the executive management. I had the opportunity to interact with the board of directors. I had the opportunity to build the CWG brand in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Uganda, and all of that. So post 3 years, I had to make a decision, right? Continue building CWG or take everything that I have learned and apply it to Xcentrique and build from there. And the decision was to go back and assume the role completely of being the CEO of Xcentrique. Yeah, so I resigned last year, 2008. So there's Xcentrique and there's the Marketing Girls Corner, which is another story. I guess I'm just going to pause there. So that was a response to your question in branding and marketing communications. It's not something I stumbled on anyway.
Interesting, very interesting story there, and from what I picked, I think your internship was the this is it moment for you, and that just spurred you to, all the other opportunities and the mindsets that you built over time, and how you just, you thought about it. What's this thing what's this role exactly that's been advertised that you can't actually do when you've done it all already? You've been able to build things, and it's interesting. I mean, that journey within, I would say, maybe 2 years or 4 years, if I'm correct. In that 4 years journey, was what gave you the guts to go for certain roles in certain structured companies that normally people won't go for, or maybe overthink it. And I mean, it's brilliant because you're like the 1% of the workforce. Many people believe that there's a time for certain roles, or you should be a certain age before you go for certain positions. Meanwhile, the experience is not in the age, is in the doings, is in the
Exactly.
workings. And that's what you did all through. You did the groundwork, you did everything. That's brilliant, really inspiring. And for CWG, for instance, what was it like behind the scenes for you? What was it like on getting the job? Where were you that day when you received the mail? How did you feel? What was your first day like on the job?
Okay, so getting the CWG job, I was confident that I was going to get it anyway, because I'm very faith-based. I believe that what is for me is mine, and if it doesn't come to me, then it just isn't for me, and that has worked for me so far. But there were things that were put in place that were going to shake my confidence a bit. For example, after the interview with CWG, I had a conversation with an older colleague and told him about the CWG interview, and he told me that if he was on the panel, he was not going to give me the job because I did not have enough experience where navigating complex environments are concerned, navigating structured environment, political environments are concerned. I let that shake me a bit, but only for a day. I have a term which says soldier is allowed to be down for a day in a war zone, but the next day you have to get back up and keep fighting the war. So yeah, it shook me for a bit, just for a few minutes and all of that. But we moved really. I knew that I had it, and if it was not going to come to me, that means there was more that I needed to do, more that I needed to expose myself to get that job and to fit into that role, and I was just really going to do that. But interestingly, about 5 days later, I got the call for negotiation. I was so terrible at negotiating at that point, but I don't think I negotiated well. The focus anyway was not about the money. It was the value and everything that I knew I could get from the experience, from the exposure, and so much more. So I got the job. On my offer letter, instead of head of brand and marketing communications, they gave me a different role, senior brand strategist. And I knew that it was because they were worried. So that was like their safe couch. Who is this girl? She's so young. What are we going to say if the decision we make is wrong? How are we going to tell people that we let somebody of this age and with this experience be the head of brands and marketing communications at CWG? But I was fine with it because, I understood myself. I knew the things that I could do, and I knew that give it a year, that was going to change. So I'm going to answer that question. In a year, I was given another offer letter or a promotion from senior brand strategy to the head of brands and marketing. I was playing the role anyway of the head of the department, but I had people also shut me down in some cases in terms of, oh, you're not the head of the department. But I'm like, oh, who is the head? Who is the head that you see? Anyway, it's just the role. It's just paper. It doesn't defeat the purpose. It doesn't defeat the role that I play on a day-to-day basis. But, in answering your question, that's how it felt when I received my promotion letter. That now informed what I had to do every day since I got the job. So it was having to prove to myself and to everybody that made a decision to let this young girl be part of the senior management. So proving to them that I could do it and I am it.
Interesting. I think you should write the book if you've not written one. If you've not written one or thinking of one yet, I think this is really an inspiring story, especially for the next generation, because they're quite young and they're doing things in the marketing space that no one has ever done before, and most likely they would have a similar experience to what you had. That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, so Shil, tell us, you've had so many campaigns under your belt, but there must be this one high stake campaign that you've worked on. So tell us about your biggest campaign, or the one that had the biggest impact, that you drove from the very beginning. You saw it from scratch, from ideation phase till the finish line, and the project actually landed in the sense that it was successful. So run us through it. But in the Playbook series, what we like to do is not just talk about the campaign itself. What exactly did you do? How exactly did it start? What was the big idea? What was the light bulb moment? What was the flop in between? Or what was maybe a particular situation that you had to go into crisis mode to manage to ensure the campaign was a success?
I mean, so far, I've had interesting campaigns that I have been a part of. Interestingly, They have been very social impact driven, not intentionally. Honestly, not intentionally. It's not like I sat down and mapped out my life and said I want to do a lot of social impact. They've been very social impact driven. They've been very innovation driven, and they've been brand transformation driven. So I want to touch a bit on the ones that have been interesting so far. For my role as the Chief Vision Officer of Xcentrique Media, the introduction of the Social Impact Initiative FMM Prize for Innovation to Flour Mills of Nigeria has been interesting. It's something that we started, and it's exciting to work with them to see the initiative in its fourth edition. There's also partnering with the Mohammed Sanusi's SDG initiative for teachers across Africa too as well. On a yearly basis, over 1,000 teachers, especially in the underserved areas in Africa, apply for this initiative, and it has transformed or blown into something else. But most especially, the one that I am so proud of is the work that I did with CWG. It pushed me from my comfort zone. It brought out so much potentials in me that I'm so proud of the work that I did while I was with them. I think it shaped my mind or my thinking where marketing, branding is concerned. Seeing that is so much more. Understanding the impact of branding to business growth, understanding the impact of branding and marketing to driving business objectives, to driving a company's vision and mission, and how brand can support in that. Prior to this moment, a few years ago, if you want to talk about the contribution of branding to business objectives, to a company's mission, we will stutter a bit. A lot of people saw branding as a cost center or marketing as a cost center. You see a situation where branding or marketing professionals, brand managers or marketing managers do budget presentations, and they're shut down by management and other staff because there's the perception that these people that spend money are here again to spend the money.
Tell me about it.
So the interesting part, right, of my work with CWG was shifting the organization to a point where they see that it is an investment center. And when you think of an investment, you have to spend to get. But when you're getting, and if it's good, right, you get a huge return. You get some sort of return, really, no matter how small, no matter how large, depending on the investment that you make. So what was interesting was shifting, was like a change management process to help them to see why marketing, branding and marketing in general, investment center. Considering that this is a brand that had sort of a sales orientation. It's a brand that has been in the company, in the industry for about 28 years. Today is 33 years, right? So it's like we're good, right? So what will marketing do differently for us? I think what was also interesting is the fact that the executive management understood and appreciated the impact of marketing, but there was the need to convince every other person in terms of we're good, profit is okay, but you're here saying that we need to do this, we need to be more relevant on digital, we need to recreate our brand story and all of that. So what was different? So the task, anyway, even prior, the first conversation that I had with the CEO, it was more of showing our clients our trophies. We have them anyway. But if a new company comes up and is able to tell a story that is more impactful than ours, they will leave us. But when they become assets, they will be willing to stay because at that point, there's an emotional connection and there's an emotional exchange. So your job is to see how to convert our clients, the customers that we have, from trophies to assets. You need to see how to make the brand, change the brand from being an elephant. So, the positioning of the brand at that point is CWG is an elephant. It has its pros and cons, if I'm being honest. But at that phase, we wanted to be a cheetah. Now, pay attention to everything that I have said, right? This is a brand that saw marketing as a cost center. I'm coming with new costs, with new initiative to say that you'll listen to me, this will work. I'm coming as a young girl with with people that had a certain perception about my age and my experience to tell them, listen to me, and this is the way that we should go. Talking alone was not going to work. I had to use a lot of data, a lot of comparative analysis for them to understand why it works. Data across different brands or different elements. Data in terms of what the biggest brands in the world are doing today, especially where branding and marketing is concerned. What the biggest brands in the world in the tech environment is doing today, especially where brands and marketing communications is concerned. What the biggest brands in Nigeria too as well is doing today, especially where brands and marketing is concerned. What are competitors as well doing where branding and marketing is concerned? What does their revenue look like? What does their profit look like? What does their customer base look like? So those were things that I had to defend to help them understand and appreciate branding and marketing. That's just one side of it.
So pretty much you started first by getting the right data
Exactly.
that could pass your point on.
Exactly, and convince. It's more than saying we have to do this. So there has to be a science behind the why we should do this. Before I now talk about what it will do for the company and how it will transform the company. But the interesting part was the customer perceptual audits that we did then. So there was a customer survey. CWG is a brand that is positioned for C-level executives in financial services industry, telecommunications industries, public service, the public sector, and emerging industries, right? So doing a perceptual audit to understand their perception of the CWG brand. Now, the summary of that audit said that this is a brand that is experienced and we're fine with that, but things are outdated and they're a bit slow. So we saw a lot of that in the responses that we got. You know, we need fast, we need agility. And that was what we latched on to show that there needs to be some sort of change. There needs to be some sort of rebranding and repositioning. If you do a quick survey on the internet now, the founder of CWG at that point, or Seun Koshoedo, was being positioned or being called the Bill Gates of Africa or the Bill Gates of Nigeria. So that means they're literally comparing CWG to the Google of Nigeria, to the Google of Africa. So how do we milk this? So it was telling them that Google is a brand that has been here for years, but they've been a brand that has been able to evolve through the test of times, through the different trends, through the different changes in consumer behavior. Google has been able to be a relatable brand, regardless of the times that Google has found itself in. That is who CWG needs to be. CWG is a sage, right? But has to be a sage or the father within the computer or the technology industry in Nigeria and Africa that is able to evolve with trends. So how were we able to do that and ensure that we position the brand as that father, as that sage? So it was a total brand transformation. It was so interesting because there were thoughts of even changing things as critical as the logo, for an example, but we went through a process, we went through the science, we went through everything, and we realized that changing the logo might affect the brand perception. That would have been too much. So we spoke with industry thought leaders, we spoke with customers. The summary was that the logo is fine. So what we just did was update the logo. You saw how Walmart just did a bit of an update in a way that was not so noticeable to their logo and their colors and all of that. So that's literally what we did. We also changed the mission. Initially, the mission was the most preferred technology company out of Africa. So we said that anybody can be the most preferred. So, but why are you the most preferred? What are you doing to position yourself as the most preferred, But we said it was, okay, we are repositioning Africa to maximize the future. Where innovation and latching on innovation in Africa is concerned, WG has been a top voice. So why don't we communicate that this is our mission? The mission was deploying technology solutions across Africa. So that was one of the things that we need to revamp, amongst other things, the colors, how we present ourselves to our customers across every touch point. So we created a revised brand strategy, identify the values that will help us drive the vision and the mission that we had created. The archetype was the sage alongside the hero, alongside so many other things. Then now developed a guideline that was a compass to talking about how we will communicate the brand across various touch points. So in living the brand, right, and communicating the brand, I had to wear two hats. Yes, the awareness creation hat, the engagement creation hat, then the customer acquisition hat too as well, and revenue generation hat. I think that's when my business development side of things was more explored, right? Because I had to do both at the same time. I want to create awareness. I want people to know CWG and all the interesting things that CWG has been all about. But nobody's going to give me the money to create the awareness and impact that I want to create if I'm not bringing in more money. So I had to find a way to ensure that whatever marketing strategies we are bringing was very big on return on investment on every marketing spend. So yes, the storytelling part of it, how we told our story on digital was very different. How we told our story on the website then was very different. But we had to introduce things like events marketing. Instead of going from door to door to speak to our customers, gather all of them in one room and sell what the future looks like to them. And the tool that we used to create this was the Xcentrique Conference. So before I talk about Xcentrique Conference, one thing that we even used to introduce the brand was the 30th anniversary. So it was an opportunity to say we are 30 years, but we have evolved through 30 years. We intend to be here for the next 30 or for the next 70. We're building a 100-fold company, and it was showing the audience how we're going to make it happen. So the Xcentrique Conference was born out of it. It was an avenue to establish CWG fully as a thought leader within the technology space in Africa. So we started the first edition. It was just like a test, 150 people. So another way that we try to ensure that it was a revenue generating platform was, looking for sponsors. CWG has partners already that they support or they work with to deploy and distribute original manufacturing equipment across Africa, or tech solutions across Africa, like Dell, like Infosys, like Vericash, and all of that. So come together, let's bring some funds together and let's create something impactful where you can sell your story easily to all your target market in one space. Then on the other side, for the customers, we have created an event that you can speak to your customers, where you can launch innovation, where you can flex your muscle as a truly innovative brand. So this was the story that we took to the financial services, to the telecommunications market, public sector market, emerging markets, and so much more. And they were interested. So first was a test, 150. The second, we brought 800 people together. And the third was the largest, right? We had 1,000 people in. We had a large virtual audience. We had different international speakers. I'm excited to see what will be done for the fourth edition too as well. So, the Xcentrique Conference was another ideal initiative on its own too as well. So, when we talk
Awesome.
about and when we speak about results of all the initiatives that has been done, at that point, back to back, CWG was being named or mentioned as one of the top and most best performing stock on the Nigerian stock exchange platform on, the NGX, back to back. And today, even post my exit from CWG, their profit margin is about 400%. In comparison to previous years. Revenue is about 90% in comparison to previous years. That, I believe, important, setting the foundation for branding and marketing has contributed overall to business growth, and the business growth that the brand is sustainably enjoying today in its market. Another thing that I apologize that I missed mentioning was the fact that we had to ensure that the brand was positioned first as a global brand, positioned also as a Pan-African brand. For that to happen, there was a general brand strategy that had to be replicated across different cultures. So the brand is present in Ghana, for an example, is present in Uganda, now Kenya and Nigeria. While the overall brand vision, the overall brand mission was set, the way we communicate it across board, the kind of pictures that we use, the kind of initiatives that we implement was different cross-culturally. How we communicate in Nigeria was different from how we communicated in other countries. Yeah, so one thing that we tried to ensure was one message, but communicated in different ways to different publics, creating independent brands across each of the different regions or across each of the different countries to also increase the value of the brand. So yes, really, if there's any work that I am proud of the most, it's CWG, in response to your question.
That's a very detailed one. So you did this as an enriched approach to transforming CWG at the time, and it's quite brilliant. Yes. All of the strategies that you mentioned are quite relatable, because this is also one thing that I have done for different companies as well. Look inward, put the house in order, and then go further. It's amazing. Exactly. I want us to switch now to the marketing girls corner, which would be one of the last things that we talk about on today's episode. How did that start? What was the idea behind it? What was the push? What motivated that initiative? Or what inspired the initiative?
Okay. So I wasn't the original idea owner. So that's why you see co-founder Marketing Girls Corner. But the idea was sold to me and I picked it on and I said that I am game. The idea was initially sold to me by Obianuju. And her story is simple, right? Obianuju and I worked together in CWG. I'm excited to have been a part of her story and to guide in the way that I could and support her growth. So the story was she found herself very late in marketing. And I had mentioned that marketing is very broad. If you don't have people guiding you, if you don't have the necessary support, you will get lost and you will drown in the ocean with so many sharks. And before you get to where you need to get to, you will be late. And we see EMOs being in their 50s, in their 60s, and all of that. But if you have the right support, nothing stops you from being a CMO at the age of 30. Nothing stops you from being a CMO at the age of 40. So my story was very different from Obianuju. I got moved in my career fast. I mean, definitely because of God's grace and because I got put people around me that were willing to support me and were willing to guide, were willing to share knowledge, were willing to point me in the right direction and push me into the right direction, fast and at every phase of my life. Talked about my first internship. There was Ayo Alabaido. Even in CWG, the CEO was a strong mentor. So there was a lot of strong people around me that were guiding me, a large percentage of the executive management that were pushing me. They were allowing me fail and they were allowing me succeed. And I was able to do things fast. I was able to fail fast. I was able to fail forward, learn and be the best version of myself because I had a hedge of strong people around me. And even in my role now at Xcentrique, there are strong people around me, from our advisory board to somebody like Mr. IDN, who is a strong mentor and all of that. So there are these people that are forces of the industry or the different industries that they play in, pushing me and guiding me and giving me the right mindset that I need to be unstoppable. So it is, why can't we come together to help girls early, help girls change their orientation about what they're able to achieve, about what they can do, give them the right mindset, and not just the mindset, give them the tools, give them the knowledge, give them the connection, give them the jobs, give them the mentors that they need to be whoever they want to be in the marketing field.
I love the idea. I mean, it's also in line with your journey as well. It couldn't be better. The coincidence of someone bringing that to your table and then it just aligning with exactly how your journey went. And then it's
Exactly.
also the opposite of the other person who's your
Exactly.
co-founder as well.
Exactly.
So amazing.
Exactly.
Please carry on. You wanted to say something earlier.
Yes. I was saying that there are a lot of communities, institutions, social development programs for already established professionals, right? But who is carrying the young girls along? That fresh graduate that is just thrown into the world and is just very lost. That person that is in a different career, maybe an engineer, that is trying to understand marketing, that wants to do marketing and that wants to do branding. We don't yet have structures, institutions that are supporting these people, those that are just lost and literally have no idea. So that is what Marketing Girls Corner is doing. You're starting from the scratch, or you're starting anywhere where marketing is concerned. We are that launch pad that you need. In my pitch to the girls in the last meeting that we have, I want a situation where the next generation of CMOs, the next generation of marketing agencies, advertising agency owners or entrepreneurs are born out of the Marketing Girls Corner. And we're trying to ensure that we have the right partnerships to make this happen. If you need to go through a school of marketing and everything that the marketing is is involved with, from content creation, influencer marketing, digital marketing, out of home, event planning, and so much more, you're going through the Marketing Girls Corner to make it happen. You need access to mentors. If you need access to the courses that you should take, the certifications that you should have, if you need access to the right mindset, if you need to be aspired to perspire, so we will give you that, at the Marketing Girls Corner. So that's really the story. There's so much more that we're doing, and I'm super excited about the future.
Awesome. I think maybe I should go start Marketing Boys Corner as well.
Right?
Interesting. This has been a very, very insightful conversation that we've had so far.
I agree.
But I just want us to touch on another point too. I know a lot of people would have questions about this. What does your toolkit look like? Let me give you an example. I wake up every morning. And the first thing I open is Slack.
Okay.
And then next thing I open is maybe Wix, because we have all of our portfolios and most of our clients' websites, and partners' websites on Wix. And then maybe the third app would be maybe LinkedIn, and then my emails too as well. So what does your toolkit look like? What are the 5 top tools that you use on a daily basis?
Okay, let's look behind the scenes. So every morning, literally what I do is say good morning, daddy, when I wake up. So I'm talking to God anyway. Yeah, so that is a must do. Then another tool that I use is Headway. Headway summarizes books. So I'm trying to understand psychology and negotiation right now. So I check for what I'm looking for on Headway, and it summarizes that. And honestly, after that, that's about it where self-development is concerned. After that, I jump into Click, I jump into Zoho, because those are the tools that we use at work. I jump into LinkedIn. On a normal day, maybe off the normal days, I might jump into Coursera. I honestly do Instagram, and I do a lot of WhatsApp. So, where toolkits and all of that is concerned, that's about it for me.
Interesting. Okay, so this part is a quick fire session.
Okay.
Well, I just give you 2 things and then you pick one out of the 2. So Canva or Adobe Campaign?
Canva, because I can use Canva.
Okay. Instagram or LinkedIn?
Instagram.
Wix or WordPress?
WordPress.
Photoshop or Canva?
Canva.
MailChimp or Zoho?
MailChimp.
Okay.
Depends on the objective, though. Depends on the objective. Yeah, but yes, for sending out bulk emails, email marketing campaigns, I'll do MailChimp. But for work,
you prefer that to Zoho?
Yeah, I prefer it to Zoho.
Interesting. Okay, and finally, Twitter or Threads?
Threads. I have never been a Twitter person.
Wow.
Never. The only thing I go to do on Twitter, 2 things. I go there every year to post my birthday pictures. Somebody literally asks that. It's usually your birthday pictures you come here to post. Or if there's something about work that I need to retweet, that's all I do on Twitter. I have never really understood how to navigate Twitter. The only reason why I'm Twitter is because I'm monitoring clients' pages or trying to repost something or anything. But where I'm actively posting is, Instagram, and Threads is linked to Instagram. So Threads, I'm a Threads person more. That's because Threads is listed. Yes, that's because Threads is linked to Instagram anyway, not because I would naturally delete Instagram, log into Threads, and start threading. If you understand.
I said Threads. I wondered, you open Threads by itself.
And thread? No, I don't do that. I don't open Twitter by myself and tweet. I don't open Threads by myself and thread. But because Thread is linked to Instagram, so it's just easy. Whatever goes on Instagram easily, I can repost on Threads when I want to.
Interesting. So, Seun, if you had a full stadium with a lot of junior marketing professionals, what's the advice that you'd give to them?
In this digital world, right, there are a lot of words, strong words. There's a lot of advice that's being thrown around. Pick the one that works for you. Honestly, everybody says things. Everybody advises you based on their own experience and what is reality to them. And what is reality to them might be limiting to you, really. So you have to test. You have to fail sometimes. You have to learn from other people's experiences so that you can repeat what they do or what they have done to be able to know and find yourself. But in all of that, know that you're the only one that is allowed to write your narrative, right? You're the only one that is allowed to tell yourself that you can't. If somebody tells you that you can't and you believe that, then you're at fault, not that person. That person is not at fault, right? So you're the only one that is allowed to write your story, create your story, tell your story. You're the shaper of your narrative, right? So regardless of how much, I'm not sure there's so much that I can tell you honestly that will work for you. You have to find your story, you have to find your voice, you have to find what works for you and just do it. But there are certain things that, that is consistent across board. When they say do not give up, keep pushing, keep being persistent. Believe that and let that drive you. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, really. So it doesn't matter what you go through, you will always overcome. If there's anything that I've learned, it doesn't matter how bad it is, it doesn't matter whatever the storm is, I always overcome. And when you overcome, you see that you come out stronger, you come out a different version, a refined version than you were yesterday. Wow.
I'm sure that would receive a standing ovation at the stadium. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patrick.
So this has been really interesting.
I agree.
The conversations have been very insightful. And if I had an emoji to explain or describe this session, it would be, the fire emoji. Lots of fire. So thank you so much for sharing your story, for sharing your wins, for sharing the in-betweens as well, the real work, the vision behind all that you've done so far. To everyone who is watching or listening, don't forget there's a playbook for everything. It's just you've not heard about it before. For all the wins and all the flops and all the glamorous things you see out there and people doing great things, there's a playbook. There's always something you could pick from. There's always a lesson to learn. And Seun has shared a lot with us today. And I hope that this helps for whoever it is that's watching. I hope it inspires you to do great things and not to wait. Age is nothing but a number. Don't wait till you have 5 years working experience. Just go for it. If you know you've done the groundwork, go for the rough edges. Go for all the experience that you can gather. And eventually, so far you're ready, opportunity will always come your way. This is the Playbook Series. And thank you so much for joining us today, Seun. We hope to see you some other time. Don't forget to follow the Playbook Series on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Spotify, and on YouTube as well. The handle is the Playbook Series. And until next time, keep building, keep showing up, and keep breaking ceilings like Seun did. Thank you so much, and have a blessed day ahead.